Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment in our Reviewed and Ranked series. Today we are highlighting one of the newer members to the Marvel Universe, as well as an up-and-comer in many a variety project, and that of course is the new Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. Now, she's referred to more frequently as Miss Marvel, as that is the technical name of her character, though it is important to note that that name has previously belonged to the character portrayed as Carol Danvers, but she's left that title behind and now is referred to as Captain Marvel, whereas Miss Marvel has been left to a much younger prodigy that functions incredibly different as compared, though the namesake is drawn from her admiration for Captain Marvel. So she's certainly a character that is unique and interesting to talk about in any new facet. And as we jump into our review of this character, make sure you check to see if you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, go ahead and fix that for me real quick, as I bring you variety content on a daily basis. And if you feel like today's episode was helpful and or enjoyable, make sure you hit that like button. So Miss Marvel is, again, a very new character, but she's a little bit quirky in terms of her overall application, at least within this game, and I hope to make a little bit more sense of how she's meant to work, because I believe that when and if used appropriately, she packs a very hefty punch. So starting where we always do, we have the team building synergies, and Miss Marvel unfortunately does not have a lot of synergies available to her, but the synergies that she does have are pretty easy to access. She has a defensive synergy with generations, a strength synergy with heavy hitters, an energy synergy with Women of Marvel, and a resilience synergy with big brains. Of course, the heavy hitters and Women of Marvel synergies are a little bit more applicable to overall gameplay, especially when you're looking for raw damage output and your ability to increase the amount of attacks in ability and synergy type attacks that you can dole out. But of course, the resilience and defensive synergies are always a nice bonus whenever you can benefit from them. The base abilities in Miss Marvel's kit are fairly straightforward. She has a 3-hit basic attack, and the important thing to note about this is because Miss Marvel's abilities are based in her ability to polymorph, which is enlarging certain aspects of her body and extending her reach with an elastic type property. You'll notice that she has quite an extended view out in front of her, where she will knock into opponents and cause some pretty substantial damage, and that's why her combo has a reduced amount of hits in it. Though the reduced number of hits is not something that should cause you to shy away from using this character, as those hits do hit decently hard. Miss Marvel's heavy attack is a single strike with a enlarged 2-hand open palmed strike out in front of the character, and this does quite well for finishing off characters that have a little bit left in their stagger meter, as well as sweeping up large collections of the grunt type characters and moving them out from around this character. It's probably one of her better get off me tools when she tends to get swarmed in by a couple of her opponents. The drawback on this heavy attack is it does have a bit more of a startup animation compared to some of the other heavy attacks from other characters on the roster. Miss Marvel does possess a double jump for her traversal, and that is manifested in the form of a midair somersault, as most of the double jump type traits are. And this, of course, provides her that additional versatility when looking to avoid floor traps and other hazards and puzzles. Ms. Marvel's falling aerial is a little bit more technical to use, and unfortunately she does not have an ability that allows you to lead into using this organically. However, it has a very long hitbox as she does a midair somersault before bringing an axe-type kick that extends a very long distance away from her body and slams down into the ground. ground. Its horizontal range is rather lackluster, but if you do manage to land on top of a couple of opponents, they will be dealt massive amounts of damage. And in terms of falling aerials, this takes up a large amount of space, albeit in a linear fashion. And the final standard ability that we need to touch on is her block and dodge animation. This involves Miss Marvel polymorphing her hands a little bit larger than they are normally, mainly to cover her upper chest and face from incoming strikes. And as she dodges away, you'll notice that she has kind of a roll that takes her away from the danger at hand. So now we can transition over and talk about her abilities. They are all offensive type abilities, which fits very well with her style. She wouldn't really have something that bodes well for a defensive type movement option or a support type option, as she's kind of a pseudo heavy character, though when compared to other characters that we've looked at, such as Hulk, she doesn't quite bring as much to the table. Her first ability is Embiggen, and all of her abilities have these emphatic exclamation points on them, so if you are referring to her abilities, I would hope that you give them the gusto that they deserve. The title of this ability in particular is a catchphrase that Miss Marvel is known to use with quite a bit of frequency, as it's a little bit easier or a younger, hipper way of addressing her polymorph type abilities. And this involves two enlarged fists that will slam down in the area directly in front of the character and crush any enemies that happen to be hit within that fray. It's got kind of a circular area of effect and does provide a little bit of knockback for the grunt type characters that get caught within that strike. And it's decent on its damage rating, having a C classification to damage and stagger damage, and maintaining that C rating in the energy point consumption. The attack itself has a melee attack type and a slam synergy trait, and all of Miss Marvel's abilities benefit from having a reduced energy point cost, an increase to the attack and stagger damage dealt, and a reduced chance of being interrupted when the abilities are fully upgraded. Miss Marvel's second ability is the Sweet Combo Attack, and this involves a flurry of punches that finishes with a larger uppercut strike, and this is a melee barrage type attack that can continue to be used if you mash repeatedly on the ability button, whether or not that's in a standard use of the ability or if it's initially instigated by a team synergy. However, I don't recommend this particular barrage, as compared to a lot of other barrage type attacks that we've looked at, it's fairly lackluster. Yes, it does hit a large area out in front of Miss Marvel's character, but with a lousy F classification to both the damage and stagger damage output and a standard C in the energy point consumption, it's more of a sour combo attack than anything else, and I wish that this had more damage output to compensate for that. So I would advise against using this ability, where she has much better abilities in terms of overall damage output. Speaking of better options, we have the third ability in Miss Marvel's kit, and that is the Super Face Kick. And this particular attack involves a large lunging kick in a forward motion with a enlarged foot. And this attack definitely makes up for the lack of damage with the previous ability, as it returns to form with that C damage classification and C classification to the energy point consumption. But the real shining point of this ability in particular is that A classification to the stagger gauge. And I would recommend trying to use this, especially if you have a group of mighty enemies that you're trying to stagger out and make more vulnerable by extending the stun timer on depleting that stagger gauge. This ability does very well at maximizing that efficiency, though I have noticed that as it has a higher startup, it's not uncommon to get knocked out of this ability before it fully detonates and allows you to benefit from the full damage there. But it does cover a decent amount of ground as it is unleashed, so if you take a step back away from your opponents before unleashing the ability, it should do a little bit better, and that is reflected in the fact that this is a melee attack type with that charge synergy trait. Miss Marvel's fourth and final ability is the giant foot spinny thing. And you can kind of tell that she's kind of young and trying to be a little bit more hip with a lot of these names. It's not my personal favorite the way that she names them, but it's the way that the character is designed and quirky and unique to her. So can't hate on it for too long or too excessively. This attack does provide Kamala with some additional range in a 360-degree motion around herself as she performs a tornado kick, again with an enlarged foot. This attack again can be pressed repeatedly to continue spinning, and in addition to being a better damage dealer than the sweet combo attack, this ability allows you to hit on all sides of the character while dealing an increased amount of damage. And you can manipulate the direction that this character goes when using the ability by adjusting the movement stick. However, it's fairly slow when you do try moving in that manner. This is again with the melee attack type and has the area assault synergy trait, maintains that C classification to damage, stagger damage, and energy point consumption, and is probably the more well-rounded of her abilities to use, though I would recommend either Embiggen or the Superface Kick more frequently, especially if you're needing to focus on a specific area of characters. But if you're needing a more directional Get Off Me tool, apart from her heavy attack, the giant foot spinny thing will certainly allow you to clear out a lot of the characters that might be bunching up on Miss Marvel and her allies. And finally, we have the extreme attack. And this is actually a highly underrated extreme attack in terms of its overall use. It detonates very quickly, running its entire course in about 4.5 seconds, and it involves Miss Marvel enlarging her body to a towering height, so much so that she leaves the frame of camera entirely, and you see 3 strikes with some enlarged boots. One with one leg, the other with the opposite leg, and then that final strike is with both legs as she rockets them down into the ground. Now, the drawback of this type of attack is it does have a little bit more of a finite range than some of the other abilities that we've seen. However, you don't want to really discount that with the damage that it unleashes, especially if you use the focal point of this attack on a mini-boss type character, as it does staggering amounts of damage to someone who is rendered vulnerable due to having their stagger gauge depleted. You will need to make sure you're right on top of whatever enemies you're wanting the brunt force of this blow to take place during. But that should be fairly simple to accomplish because Miss Marvel does move relatively quickly and can get into position at a moment's notice before doling out that large amount of damage from this extreme attack. But again, the one caution is as soon as you detonate the extreme attack, she will start it right where she's at. She does not course correct, she does not move. So you really need to make sure that you are exactly where you want it to be detonated when initiating this extreme attack. Well, we've unpacked basically everything that we really needed to talk about in order to place Miss Marvel into our tier list. So the question is, where does she belong? Well, she is very useful, albeit kind of quirky and a little bit awkward to fully understand, at least initially, how she's best utilized. But trickiness in control and versatility doesn't mean that you're a bad character. It just means you need to learn the matchup better. So she's already better off than these bottom tiers in the roster. So where does she end up on the top end? I don't think that she has what it needs. I don't think she has what it takes to make her way into the S tier of the roster, especially because these characters of Hulk and Black Panther, they just have raw amounts of damage output with every single facet of their character, whether it's a standard attack or a synergy or a unique ability type attack. She just doesn't have the edge that's needed to push her up into that top category. I do feel that she borders somewhere between the ranks of B and A. And after looking at everything that she has, the biggest shining attribute about all of the characters here in the A class is their abilities are all, at least to some degree, of use. And Miss Marvel has that unfortunate sweet combo attack that doesn't exactly give her the edge that she needs with damage output resources. So unfortunately, I will need to stick her in the front of this B class. And I know some of you were thinking that, yeah, well, you put Miles up here and he has an attack that has a similar classification, but his is a lot more versatile as it covers large amounts of the floor and hits repeatedly after being initiated just once. So there's a very big difference between those two attacks despite them having very similar rankings. So let's go ahead and move these characters out of the way so we can place Miss Marvel at the front of this B tier. And just like that, she fits very nicely up in the front of this tier. But what do you think? Do you think that I ranked her correctly? Do you think that there's something that I missed, underappreciated, or am just completely wrong about? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below, as I do read through the comments on these videos to get a better idea. And who knows, maybe I will reconsider where she's placed as we continue looking at the viability of the characters in Ultimate Alliance 3. But until then, that's going to be all we do for today. So thanks again for watching. Again, if you made it this far into the video, please make sure to hit that like button, as it's clear that you enjoyed it at least to some degree. And don't forget to subscribe for more daily variety content. Thanks again for your time, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day.